The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. The Durham District School Board recognizes Indigenous rights are distinct. In the exercise of those rights, Indigenous staff and students shall not be subjected to actions with the aim or effect of depriving these distinct rights.
The Durham District School Board is committed to providing learning and working environments that center human rights and equity, and are safe, welcoming, respectful, equitable, accessible, inclusive, and free from all forms of discrimination, oppression, harassment, and harm. This African ancestral recognition is made in the spirit of Umoja, a calling for us to come together to work collectively towards the common good for the success of all students, with particular attention to Black and Indigenous students, staff, and caregivers. We are evoking the spirit of the African ancestors to guide us and protect us in this work of learning, leading, and healing. We will continue to survive and thrive long after the history of the transatlantic slave trade. We also believe that advancing Indigenous sovereignty is deeply and inextricably linked to Black liberation, and we remain committed to advancing both. We want to recognize the long-standing generations of Black people in Canada and celebrate the legacy of their contributions towards building this country by honoring the shoulders upon those we stand. So my name is Ali Futa. I will be one of two MCs for tonight. I am one of three student representatives on DDSB's Anti-Black Racism Action Team, or ABRAT for short. I am a grade 12 student who is currently attending Port Perry High School, and I am the president of my student body and founder of my school's Black Student Alliance.
And my name is Avril Rowe. I'm a community member on the Anti-Black Racism Action Task Force and a DDSB parent. I'm proud to be an MC with Ali tonight for the virtual Compendium. We welcome and thank all attendees who have joined tonight to hear about the ongoing work with the Compendium of Action for Black Student Success 2.0. So the Durham District School Board has made a strong and clear commitment to creating the conditions for all students to reach their full potential, to find joy, to explore their talents, and to author their own path. Through our work, research, and learning, we recognize that Black students have historically faced obstacles that get in the way of unleashing their excellence and experiencing joy in their school lives. This document illuminates the foundations of anti-Black racism faced by people of African descent in our schools and school communities. This reality necessitates a precise and persistent call to action in our schools, our classrooms, and at the desk of each student. Part of our commitment is intentionally connecting with the Black community and its supporting partners in Durham to share, listen, and be responsive to your needs. Tonight, we will hear from several people who will speak to the work being done to support your children. You also have the opportunity to submit questions through the registration process, and this evening, we will take the time to answer some of those questions. Along with the question and answer section of the night, many of the questions will be answered throughout the presentation this evening by our various presenters. We will also be sharing some information after the event with some additional questions, as well as some of the success factors shared by other parents and community members.
For your reference, please see today's agenda here. All right, without further ado, we would like to welcome Chair of the Durham District School Board of Trustees, Tracy Brown.
Thank you and good evening. Welcome to the Compendium of Action for Black Student Success 2.0. It is truly an honor to be here today as we have come together to engage in critical conversations to dismantle anti-Black racism and advance equity, inclusion, and justice in education. This gathering is a direct reflection of the Durham District School Board's commitment to creating meaningful change. Guided by our human rights, anti-discrimination and anti-racism policy, our anti-oppression strategy, and the Compendium of Action for Black Student Success 2.0. We are steadfast in our efforts to ensure that all Black students are celebrated, empowered, and supported to achieve their full potential. To our esteemed students, staff, families, community members, and special guests, your presence here underscores the importance of this work and the shared belief that Black excellence is not only to be celebrated, but championed in every space and every opportunity. As we gather today, let us reflect on the progress made, acknowledge the challenges that remain, and reaffirm our commitment to empowering Black student success in meaningful and transformative ways. This is not just an event, but a call to action, a chance to listen, learn, and leave inspired to drive change in our schools and our communities. We are privileged to have Dr. Nicole West Burns with us today. Dr. West Burns is a leading consultant on educational equity, and has been a trailblazer in guiding professional learning that promotes equitable educational outcomes for students. Through her work, she has transformed educational practices to center the lived experiences of students and foster success. Dr. West Burns, thank you for joining us and leading today's meaningful conversations. Your expertise, your insight, and unwavering commitment to equity in education inspires us all to reflect deeply on our practices and take deliberate steps to disrupt systemic barriers. To everyone here, thank you for your presence and dedication to this vital work. Together, we are creating a future where every Black student feels seen, valued, and empowered to succeed. Let today's conversation propel us forward in action and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Brown. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Director of Education for the Durham District School Board, Camille Williams-Taylor, who will bring greetings to this evening.
Thank you so much, Ali, and thank you, Chair Brown, for your opening remarks. And I'll say to the audience, as I always do, good evening, good people. And I'm hoping that as you're watching, that this isn't just a watch party, but that you are in fact taking notes, and that when I reach out to you through the screen to say good evening, good people, that in the true way of community, I'm going to be hearing you in some way, shape, or form saying good evening back. So today we're here to have a conversation and an exploration around the Compendium of Action for Black Student Success 2.0. And it's a pleasure to be able to bring 2.0 to you because, again, the development and the execution of our first iteration of the work was such that it brought us to great thought, to great exploration of research, and to watch how impact makes a difference in the lives, not just of our students, but also our staff and our community. And so we took that learning to build forward our new approach in our 2.0 actions that are building on previous actions. The work is never complete. We want to see 100% improvement and moving forward and progress. And as we do that, we then open up the spaces for other improvement. And improvement is built on feedback. And so we're hoping to hear from you through our conversations today. The resource that we will be talking about is a compilation of actions intended to establish and sustain conditions for Black children and youth to realize and optimize their potential. To paraphrase from an author, Adam Grant, it is about building systems that provide opportunities for people to travel great distances. Good systems open doors, offer windows to those who are turned away from the door, and shatter glass ceilings for those who are all too often denied a shot to break through. The Compendium of Action is built on the assumption of genius, Black genius, Black brilliance, and the gifts of Black children. It is built on the premise of genius that is waiting to emerge. Our work at the DDSB is to shape and shift our system to enable Black excellence to shine. To do this, we have to count on your partnership, your wisdom, and your expertise. We are here to share our aspirations and our intentions compiled in this document, and we want to get input on how to fuel progress, how to set in motion actions that will put our kids on a course of success with joy, optimism, confidence, and hope. We know the way forward is challenging. It is ever more challenging as we look at the world around us and the experiences that we're all having. But we need, as a community, to really help to galvanize our children, galvanize our students, galvanize our system in the spirit of joy, optimism, confidence, and hope. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that we will be able to inspire you and that we will continue to receive your energy, whether it's through our virtual experience here or through our opportunities in the future in person. We hope that this opportunity for you will also be an inspiration of confidence. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it back over to Ali.
All right, thank you, Director Williams-Taylor. We appreciate all the work you're doing in support of the entire DDSB community.
And now like to welcome Dr. Nicole Westburns. Dr. Nicole Westburns is an experienced professional development consultant whose work focuses on educational equity issues. For more than a decade, Dr. Westburns has had the pleasure of working in some capacity of professional learning with over 50% of the school boards in the province of Ontario. Her work focuses on empowering educators to create learning opportunities that are inclusive, affirming, and reflective of student identities. She also uses a thoughtful and evidence-based approach that encourages educators to reflect on their practices and make changes to better support all students. From 2013 to 2019, Dr. Westburns was a leader on equity initiatives and collaborations with the Ontario Ministry of Education. As a facilitator, she co-developed and co-led professional learning tied to CRRP for 39 school boards across the province. Over the past few years, Dr. Westburns has been leading professional learning with several school boards focused on anti-oppression and equity, including specific work focused on challenging anti-Black racism in education. Some of her clients have included Toronto District School Board, Peel District School Board, Halton District School Board, Brant Haldeman Norfolk Catholic District School Board, Ottawa Carleton District School Board, Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board, Upper Grand District School Board, and of course, our very own Durham District School Board. We would like to introduce and welcome Dr. Nicole Westburns to you all.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I don't believe that my camera is working, but I'm hoping you can hear me. I do have slides to share, so I would like to go ahead and do that if I might. My camera is working, so you can see me. Okay, great. I can't see myself. Well, we know how this is going to go. Thank you so much for letting me know. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. That's what I do. I turn my camera off. Well, hello, you can see my face, but I don't know that you can see me. Well, hello and welcome. Oh, now I see it. All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. Avril, thank you for that introduction. And I'm just so pleased to be able to be here with you this evening for a little bit of time. Thank you to everyone who's been a part of this work as we've moved forward. So I do want to begin to share my slides. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera and begin to share. I'm hoping that will work out. Yes, it looks like it will. Alrighty. So if I'm sharing my screen and then here, all right, well, it's a little bit messy, but here we go. All right, so everyone, thank you again for being here. Thank you to Director Williams-Taylor, Margaret Lazarus, Sean McCormick, the entire equity and anti-oppression team, and the many people that have been a part of this work that I've been privileged to be in partnership with within your board for the past several years. In roughly the next 10 minutes, I'm going to share with you this presentation, Building Educator Capacity in Addressing Anti-Black Racism, Exploring Possibilities with Critically Conscious Practitioner Inquiry, or what we've come to affectionately call CCPI. You know, in education, we love a good acronym. So I'm going to tell you about the origins of the CCPI work, how that connects into the work that we are doing to move things forward, to move the needle in terms of the experiences and outcomes for Black students. I'm going to tell you the why of it and what it seeks to do. I never claim that there's one way to move this needle. Multiple entries can do and should exist, but this is the way that I have contributed. And I have to laugh right here as we start. We had a few little glitches there, as you can see. Those things happen. I was told I have about 10 minutes to speak. I said to Margaret and Sean, y'all know I can't say nothing in 10 minutes, but I am going to try my best. And I'm going to actually reclaim my time and take back 30 seconds for the technical glitches. So here we go. So I start with a personal story, as I often bring into my work. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, some of you may know him, some of you may not. He was a scholar, a professor, a sociologist, a Pan-Africanist, an accomplished author, activist, first Black man to get a PhD from Harvard. And he was introduced to me in grade 5. You see, I had an assignment for school. I often did my homework at the kitchen table where my mother might be in there washing my sister's baby bottles or preparing dinner for the evening. And we would talk about school and we would talk about what I was learning. So in grade 5, my teacher at my elementary school in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., with a total of 3 Black students, including myself and my brother, well, my teacher had given me a sheet of paper that day that was titled Famous Americans. And then there was a list of about 25 names on that page. And the instructions were to choose one and write a report. Now, I didn't recognize a lot of these names. And as usual, my mother and I would have conversations about what I was working on. So I said, Mom, I got this sheet of paper today. It says Famous Americans, and it lists 25 names. My mother said, Famous Americans. Now, you see, my mother went to all Black segregated schools, K to 12. She then went on to Howard University. And so she wanted to see who was on this sheet of Famous Americans. She said, give me that paper. I handed her the paper. She eyeballed it for a moment, and then she said, give me your pencil. I gave her my pencil. And then she proceeded to write on the tear-off portion at the bottom, Nicole will write her report about an African American. And I looked at her and I said, okay. I did not know who W.B. Du Bois was, but I knew that he was someone I should know. My mother told me to go into the den, look on the shelf, and get a book called The Souls of Black Folk. And from that point on, I did know who W.E.B. Du Bois was. I pulled from his work in grade 5 and again in my doctoral program, as he was a prolific thinker raising Black consciousness. And he had a lot to say about the education of Black children in public school systems, particularly at the point of school integration. In the mid-1900s in the United States, he warned us that, quote, we must not accept a proffered equality which is not equality, just because it does not include overt segregation. You see, W.E.B. Du Bois understood something that at that time many did not, or they disregarded, that the mere act of integration does not change the dominant culture being the group that has held power historically, politically, and socially, and thus controls our institutions like schools and how they operate. It does not change the dominant ideologies of the members of the dominant society who work in these schools. And so what does that mean for Black children's experiences in many of our modern day public school systems? Well, you all know the data. We're not going to talk about that tonight. And for far too many of us, it's not just the data we read in these reports, it's our lives, it's our children, it's maybe our grandchildren. It might have been our own experiences. What we know is that the conditions we face in these school systems, the outcomes we see, are often not reflective of what we deserve, of who we are, of our genius and excellence, as Director Williams-Taylor talked about, of what our children's present and future potential is. So as I do this work in equity and anti-oppression education, addressing specifically anti-Black racism as well, I am always thinking about what can we do to really move this needle. I go back to the work of one of my sheroes, Dr. Ladson Billings, Gloria Ladson Billings, and she asked us to think about a very important question many, many years ago. She said, how are we positioning this? Because too often when we're looking at what's going on for Black students in schools, the gaze has been at the students. We've been looking at trying to fill a gap or close a gap or something like that, trying to fix something else. When she said this is about addressing what she called an educational debt which is owed to Black students for the ways in which we as education systems have failed them and have engaged in practices that have harmed and not taught them to their potential. The system owes them something different. The system owes them justice. And so Dr. Ladson Billings went on in her work to look at what is going on within these school systems. What do schools need to do? What do teachers need to do? And in her seminal work in 1994, Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings coined this phrase, culturally relevant pedagogy. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. Well, this is what's at the root of it. And I always work with the educators to understand what is at the root. And so I share with you very quickly, Dr. Ladson Billings looked at teachers who were successful with African American children, and she theorized that and coded that, and she talked about what that meant. I will highlight for you just a few things. High expectations. What this meant was that we looked at all Black students and we know they are capable of learning, and expectations go along with that. In terms of cultural competence meant that these teachers were valuing who Black children are and where they come from, understanding that, as my mama would say, even if you didn't have two nickels to rub together, that has nothing to do with intellectually what you are capable of doing and being. And critical consciousness, understanding how issues of oppression play out in our world and actually teaching us about that and pushing back to it. Now, since 1994, when this work came out, still highly acclaimed, still very relevant today, still at the foundations of what I would say any solid piece of academic work that comes out tied to Black students and their schooling experiences. Even so, the research tells us that the critical consciousness is the least likely component that teachers will take up. And so what we know is that that critical consciousness is that understanding of oppression, how oppression has historically taken place and how it's taking place today, being able to push back to it. It originally comes from Paulo Freire's work in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, when he talked about education for freedom, education for liberation. And so what I came to know as I was doing this work many years ago is that we cannot help teachers to do this work with students if they have not done some of this work for themselves. Dr. Ladson Billings reminds us that we've got to work on our pedagogical and worldview shifts. The process of developing a worldview that differs from dominant worldview requires active intellectual work on the part of the knower, because school, society, and the structure and production of knowledge are designed to create individuals who internalize dominant worldview and knowledge production and the acquisition process. So she goes on in Disrupting Whiteness in Teacher Education to ask this question: how do white, middle class, prospective teachers, right? She's talking about teacher candidates. We could say teachers in classrooms today make the transition from being unaware of their culture to a critical understanding of the role of culture, power, and oppression. That is a part of what CCPI work seeks to do. And so as we engage in this work, we create a parallel pathway. Now, inquiry has been a part of work in Ontario for teachers for many, many years, but I think this was a new way of thinking about inquiry, because it requires not that we just do some kind of inquiry, but that we're also inquiring into ourselves. In that parallel pathway, educators are being provided with information to build their own critical consciousness while engaging in action in an inquiry to address how anti-Black racism has and is playing out and what their sphere of control and influence might be, how they might change it. My partner in good trouble, Karen Murray from the Center of Excellence for Black Student Achievement and a system superintendent in Toronto District School Board, and I have worked together for a long time. And we came up with these questions many years ago to help us frame this work. Questions that at the core we must be asking as we are working with educators. How might we make sure we understand the context, ourselves, and the actions? In terms of context, we build knowledge around common vocabulary with the teachers. We are talking about what is anti-Black racism in Canada historically and present day, and what does that mean in education? We talk about the ways that white supremacy has impacted us and the characteristics of that in our dominant institutions that play out in everything that happens. We've built our knowledge around the individual, ideological, and systemic practices. And we have not started from this place of, well, is it here? We go to Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, who says, if you live in a society with smog, you cannot help but breathe it in. We reflect on the smog. And so one of the things we know, if we look at the teacher iceberg, is that there are important pieces that surface. The curriculum is important, the behaviors are important, classroom environment important. But what we know is that what's really important is what is below the waterline. That's what matters. That's what plays out also, whether we see it or don't see it. The ideologies, the biases, the beliefs, and the purpose, all of that of the educator are important for us to work on as well. So all of this must be and is a part of the CCPI work. Now, in this work, I like to say I take folks back to school. We do readings. We have pre-readings with every session. We have readings as follow-up, and we have readings additionally along the way. We are building our knowledge about history and content and things that maybe as educators, they've never had an opportunity to learn about. There's follow-up journal reflections. We are writing. We are engaging in something called race reflective journaling, which has been shown to actually make a difference in terms of this work, helping us to unpack things, record moments of tension, record moments of aha and learnings. They're key parts in this work, and they're a part of the CCPI process. And so this is what the process looks like in the red there. Educator chooses something they want to know more about and creates a question. That happens several sessions in because, again, we're making sure that we're all singing from the same song sheet, that we all come with some critical understandings about what it is that we are addressing. We're not going to try to put Band-Aids on things. We're going to get to the root and get to the surface. So we try to really think about what is at play. The educator creates the questions or the teams. They create action plans. All of their questions and action plans, I'm able to vet. We have conferences. We talk about them. They're supported by the many wonderful people in the Equity Anti-Oppression and other folks who've pulled together to do this work in your board. And then they're in the Nike phase. I call it just do it. They're doing it, doing it, doing it. They're learning from what they're doing. They're still engaged in readings and professional learning communities. And then they're looking at, what did we learn? What do we need to do next? How do we need to learn more about this? How can we go further? Most of the work I pull from is from the thinking of Black scholars, brilliant Black folks who come with that sociopolitical consciousness, things that are rooted in understanding Black genius and excellence. This is one of the texts or two of the texts that we pull from one of the authors, Dr. Goldie Muhammad, as we look at curriculum. We emphasize curriculum in this work often because curriculum is a place where teachers have a great sphere of control and influence. And so Dr. Muhammad's framework talks about holistic development. We want to think about who our children are in all their ways of being. So we focus in on identity as a component and making sure they have the requisite skills to make any kind of decisions they want to make in the future. We help to build their intellect around things that are important in the world, important for them to know, help them understand criticality, understanding these inequities, and how, again, that is not a barrier and that cannot hold them back, helping them to build up what Cornel West called a cultural armor about who they are and what they can do. And last but not least, it's been mentioned a few times here, joy. Joy is absolutely essential when we think about the experiences for Black children, Indigenous children. Historically in our schools, joy has not been there. So these are the 5 components from which teachers are beginning to build curriculum or continuing to build curriculum tied into much of the CCPI work. What I will just share with you as I wrap up is that this work has been something that I think has had some impact in terms of the thinking of the educators. There were surveys done. There's surveys done at the end of each cohort, and maybe some of these have been shared with you all previously. But what we were asking here on a Likert scale was for people to think about their thinking about these issues as we move through the series. 98.2% strongly agreed that the work of the sessions, activities, conversations, and inquiry expanded and deepened their thinking about anti-Black racism in the world and in educational context. And with this one, 90.2% strongly agreed that the work of the CCPI series and their inquiries supported action in their schools and classrooms. I will be the first one to say that CCPI is not a perfect pathway. We are not about perfection, though. We are about attempting to hold ourselves accountable to trying, to learning, to making a misstep and then trying again, to challenging our thinking and our biases, to helping to create possibilities for better experiences and outcomes for Black students. Over the many spaces and places where I have engaged with educators across this province in this work, this is one of the places where I have seen change happen. And so in this work, educators are learning and trying to be, in the words of Cornelius Minor, who our students need us to be. I say it's about time. So circling back to Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, I share this quote: "Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done." I thank you for being here this evening, for your time, your participation, collective energy, and commitment to our children. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Nicole Westburns. We appreciate your continued support and partnership with the DDSB and all the work you are doing to ensure cultural perspectives and resources are a part of all students' learning, not only here in the DDSB, but around the province. It's now my pleasure to welcome back Ali and introduce Brianne to share their experiences within DDSB as students.
All right, thank you, Avril. So I'll just talk about my school's BSA, or Black Student Association. Last year, I founded my school's Black Student Association alongside a close friend of mine who is an upperclassman. We call it BIPOC to be inclusive of all races and ethnicities, largely in part due to the lack of diversity in our school. BIPOC is a safe space for students at lunch that provides an outlet for creativity and community betterment. Through BIPOC, we are able to support local business and create community between students of color at our school. All the while, we're promoting school spirit and also extracurricular participation. Since last year, we were able to triple in members and have led multiple student initiatives for fundraising and propagation of mindfulness. Benefits of BIPOC have been well experienced by me and my peers who participate in the club. We have a lot of support from our school faculty, which is great. Whether it be free lunches or extra funding for our events we have planned, we do get a lot of help from our faculty, and I'm very appreciative for it. There's also a lot of room for positions and outlets for your voice to be heard. Like I myself participate in DDSB's Anti-Black Racism Action Team, which is a position I learned about through our Black Student Association. I'm very grateful for. My upperclassman friend who helped me found the club actually got a scholarship for his endeavors in founding our BSA. So there's also a lot of rewards for participating and being a leader in these clubs. Beyond that, there's also a lot of field trips and opportunities to learn about Blackness in the DDSB and be a mentor through the Brother and Sisterhood programs through Cypher and Empower Her. And there's also a lot of outlets for your creativity that celebrate Black art contests and things of that sort. Everybody who participates in BIPOC at my school has just gotten so much out of it. I can honestly say, as someone who does a lot for our school, that this is like the best thing that I've ever done with Fort Perry. We want to move our club forward in involving the younger elementary schools to make the transition to high school easier, whether it be through mentorship, tutoring, or community events. Despite the low levels of diversity in Durham, through these endeavors, I think that we can create a great community for Black people. I'll pass it on to Brianna.
Thank you for sharing your experiences, Ali. Hello, my name is Brianna Lucole, and I am the president of Donald A. Wilson's Successful Black Student Association. I joined the SPSA in the 10th grade when it first began. The room was filled with passionate students eager to create a space where Black students felt supported and celebrated. Since then, we've hosted events like Soul Food Mondays, movie nights, and a panel titled Black and Influencing, featuring 3 Black influencers who shared their journey to success. In our second year, we launched a community outreach program where members visited 4 different elementary schools to read books celebrating Blackness and diversity in both French and English to kindergarten through grade 3 students. This year, we're expanding the program using the theme of self-love as our guiding force. We'll host fun affirmation-based activities for younger students and workshops for grades 7s and 8s to emphasize the importance of self-love in their high school journey. The schools we are visiting are also feeder schools, so this will help introduce them to our club and hopefully encourage them to join once they enter high school. Unfortunately, many Black students in our school have felt unsupported by guidance staff. A recurring issue is being steered towards applied or college level courses rather than academic ones, limiting their post-secondary opportunities and options. To address this, we are developing a mentorship program that pairs grade 11 and 12 students with grade 9 and 10 students. The goal is to provide younger students with a mentor who understands their experiences and can offer support with tutoring, course selection, and emotional challenges. This program will also help mentors build confidence, strengthen their resumes, and earn volunteer hours. I am now in the 12th grade, and looking back, being part of my school's Black Student Union is one of the greatest decisions I have ever made. It's built my confidence, allowed me to make connections, and has provided me with amazing opportunities. One of those being able to attend the BSA conference, where I connected with other BSUs, gained inspiration from their initiatives, and learned new ways to engage students. It also strengthened the bond with my fellow executive members, making the experience even more rewarding.
All right, thank you so much for your insight and experiences, Brianne. Next, I'd like to pass the mic on to Sean McCormack. A mentor to many students across the DDSB, he's our system lead for anti-oppression. He will be sharing information about the board's new anti-oppression strategy.
Thank you, Ali, and thank you, Brianne. Such kind words, Ali. And you two are definitely the definition of Black excellence. I'm so proud to hear all the wonderful initiatives that you are both taking on in your school, not only fostering leadership, but personal growth within yourselves. So thank you for that and keep up the great work. And we're always here to support you all. As Ali mentioned, my name is Sean McCormack, and I am the system lead for anti-oppression and human rights here in the DDSB. Or simply put, I am a principal that works at the board office who supports all schools and departments within the district on how to better create equitable and inclusive learning and working spaces. So after the anti-oppression strategy, well, after an extensive amount of consultation, both internally and with our external community partners, we were pleased to release the DDSB anti-oppression strategy this past October. The strategy recognizes our commitment to dismantle racism and discrimination of all forms for all identities and offers intentional commitments, actions, considerations to support the work that we do throughout the district. On screen, you can see the 5 priorities of the anti-oppression strategy. So these priorities were created based on the information we obtained during our consultations. As we spoke to a variety of groups, these 5 themes consistently emerged throughout our discussions. These commonalities signify the areas that all groups would like to see move forward to ensure that they are feeling safe, welcome, and able to thrive in the DDSB community. So here are the 5 priorities of the anti-oppression strategy. As you can see, our commitment is to represent, affirm, and recognize all identities. Our next commitment is to cultivate safe learning and working environments for all identities, foster meaningful connections for all, support mental health and well-being for all identities, and to create accessible learning opportunities for all. However, we recognize that although these priorities are intended to disrupt racism and discrimination, how they're actioned may intersect with some, but may look very different for other identities. So we know that given the fact that we strive to know the people that we serve, it's our commitment to continue to do so that we can action these priorities in very meaningful ways for all. So several weeks ago, those of you who are educators or have students within the system would have received an email from our communications department with a link to the strategy. So we encourage you to take some time to explore it, to get a better understanding of the actions that you may already be seeing in your school spaces, or the actions you'd like to see move forward in the schools that you are in your communities. It is important to note that the strategy does align with our DDSB multi-year strategic plan, as well as the Compendium of Action for Black Student Success. And we're already working alongside school and department leaders on how we can best move those actions forward to see the change that we all want to see within the district. So as we move forward this work in the anti-oppression department, our goal is to align all future strategies and plans with the anti-oppression strategy for that alignment and that consistency. So as we're working on a number of other supporting documents and thinking forward to the next version of the compendium, because we know this one will be so successful that we will have to do a 3.0, that it will align with the anti-oppression strategy as well. So we want to thank you for, again, taking the time to dive deep into this document, taking the time to hear some of the things that we're doing in terms of moving forward this strategy. And we want to continue to do the work to serve your families in the most meaningful way. And one way in which we continue to do that is every year we're committed to reporting back to the community. And this is the first of 2 events that we will have each year that centered the Black Students Compendium. So our last event was last June. We had 2 events. And at that event, it was an opportunity for us to share some of the work happening within the Compendium of Action for Black Student Success, but most importantly, to hear feedback from you all, the community members, because your voice certainly does matter. And what you're experiencing matters to us as well. And the only way that we can truly understand if we're being responsive to your needs is to listen, learn, and continue to move forward actions. So next, I'd like to invite Superintendent Margaret Lazarus and retired principal, elementary principal in the DDSB, Jackie Stair, to present some information that we have collected at the last community engagement event in June.
Thank you, Sean, and good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with you tonight. The Compendium of Action for Black Student Success is a document that we want to make sure is widely shared throughout the system. We held 2 community sessions back in June where we shared information with parents, guardians, and members of the community about the compendium and asked for their feedback and their response to the document, the action items contained in the document, as well as the evidence of impact. Those sessions were held at Da Vinci Public School in Ajax and at Port Perry High School in Port Perry. Basically, by communicating with the community, we make sure that we're being transparent in the work that we're doing and that we are held accountable to make sure that we are achieving the goals that we've set out to achieve in this document. This evening, what we're going to do is respond to some of the issues that were identified at those sessions. We don't have enough time, obviously, to cover all of them, but we will be responding in writing to the ones that we didn't cover tonight, and we'll be sending that information back out to participants. So basically, the things that I'm going to cover in the next few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about the compendium, going to talk about the evidence of impacts within the compendium, and talk about student initiatives for Black students within the DDSB, and a little bit about parent engagement. So those were some of the emerging themes, questions, and observations that we heard from members of the community. We were asked how long the compendium has been in the making. And as Camille referenced earlier on, this is our second, this is 2.0, which emerged from the first version of the compendium, which first came out in 2018. And again, as with the anti-oppression strategy, it was developed with based on input from the community. And a number of town hall sessions were held within the district where we heard loud and clear what parents were concerned about with respect to the experiences of their Black children within the DDSB. So taking that information, a number of action items were developed, and the first compendium was launched in 2018. This is 2.0, and it was launched in February of this year, 2024. We in-service school leaders who in turn in-service their staff. That included teachers, educational assistants, ECEs, admin staff, secretarial admin staff, and also our custodial staff. So this document is not just for teachers and administrators, but we expect all DDSB staff to be engaged in this work. We shared the document, as I mentioned, with the community in June. And again, we will be holding sessions twice this year to talk to community members about the document. One of the things that we were asked about was the evidence of impact, which basically is our way of evaluating and making sure that the goals that we set out in the document are being achieved. So one example of an evidence of impact I'm going to read to you says, superintendent school visits will focus on supporting the school's anti-oppression goals. And at this time, I'm going to ask Superintendent Lazarus to speak directly to that evidence of impact.
Thank you, Jackie, for that. Yes, so as a superintendent within the Durham District School Board, one of our jobs is to visit our schools formally at least 3 times a year. We're always in and out of our schools, but we must do 3 formal visits to our schools. And that's one of the ways that we check for impact is by talking to students, talking to the principals, and talking to staff about the impact of disrupting anti-Black racism within our schools, and how are the teachers incorporating the identity of the children into the curriculum. And we often ask students about their school experience to measure the impact, to see if what we are in servicing the professional development we are doing with our principals and our teachers, is that having an impact on our students? And I'm happy to tell you, when I'm talking to students, they are experiencing difference in their curriculum. They're seeing themselves represented in the resources that they're using, in the lessons that they're experiencing. So it's one good way of knowing that what we're doing is actually landing at the desks of the children. And we ask them if the work is making a difference for them in their lives. And if it is, what is it that's really making that difference? And if it's not, what then do we still need to do to make sure our students are experiencing their lived experience and seeing themselves represented in the curriculum? It's part of the joy for me as a superintendent is going into these schools and asking our students. And one thing about them is they'll tell you the truth. And so I'm happy to report that they do tell us that they see a big difference. And I've talked to students from kindergarten right up to grade 12. They are seeing a difference in the curriculum, and it's satisfying to know that what we're doing is working.
Thank you, Margaret. One of the other issues that came forward, parents asked about the fact that they realized that there were some initiatives that were focused on our Black students, but they wanted to know how those initiatives were communicated so that they could hear about them and perhaps have students or their children participate in these programs. So these are a couple of the initiatives that we've engaged in. The Cypher for our male Black students, which receives a lot of positive response from our young men in the system. Empower Her is focused on our female students, and the Black Student Alliance that Ali has referred to earlier on in his when he was speaking about his experience establishing a Black Student Alliance or BIPOC at his school. So information is sent out to schools about these initiatives, and administrators and schools are encouraged to send school teams to these events. While we would love to be able to have every single Black student who wants to participate in these programs participate, logistically at this point, that's not something that we are able to do. However, we do try to ensure that there is a wide cross-section of students from across the district, and we try to get as many schools as possible to participate. Recognizing that not all students will be able to be a part of this, we encourage those schools that do send students to have those students to share the learning that they've received from their engagement in those activities, to share the activities when they go back to the school. We encourage you as parents and as caregivers to ask your school administrator about these initiatives and to ask if your school has participated in them in the past or will be participating this year. And as I said, while we can't accommodate everyone, I think that when you talk to the school administrators, they'll be able to share with you if indeed students from the schools have gone, and they can share with you some of the activities and some of the learning that has taken place at those events. One of the other things that parents asked us about was the issue of parent engagement in our schools. And one of the things that was noted is that when children are in the primary and the junior division, there seems to be a lot more communication that goes home. But as our students move through the system and move on into the intermediate years and into high school, that there tends to be less communication. I think sometimes as children get older, they sometimes want to discourage their parents from participating, but I would encourage you when they're in grade 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 to continue to engage at the school level and to find out as much as you can about the activities that are taking place in the school. And also encourage you as parents to find out about your school community council. We know that everybody leads busy lives, and sometimes it's hard to make the commitment to some of these councils and committees that exist within the school. But if perhaps you can't serve on the council, I would encourage you to commit to attending 1 or 2 meetings. It's really a great way to find out about the things that are happening at the school, and also to find out about some of the board initiatives as well. We encourage you to volunteer at your child's school. That's another great way to find out what's happening there. I know for some of you, you may have had the experience where you're sitting around the dinner table with your child at the end of the day, and you ask them what happened at school today, and they say nothing, right? Which we know is not the case. So we encourage you to, as much as possible, where you can, attend school presentations, attend school assemblies. As I said, be a part of the school community council. And that way, you not only are you actively engaged in your child's school, but you get a bird's eye view of what is happening at the school. Can we, the next slide, please? Okay, sorry. Yes, at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Andrea or Superintendent Lazarus. Was there something that you wanted to add?
Actually, I wanted to add that one of the other concerns that you had in our 2 sessions in the spring was about the inclusive curriculum. And what we do recognize is that starting in September 2025, Black history will be taught in grade 7s, 8, and grade 10. And these courses will highlight the various Black communities that certainly have built and developed and contributed to the success of our country, Canada. And it's mandatory for our students, so this is a real plus. So February the 8th, 2024 was a great day when the former Minister Lecce made this announcement. And students will start learning about the positive contributions and achievements of Black Canadians. So that's a plus for all of us at this time in our educational journeys.
And just one more thing, we're making the assumption that many of you have seen or read the Compendium of Action for Black Student Success. We certainly hope you have. But if you haven't, I would encourage you as soon as possible after this meeting to try to locate a copy of the document and to read through it, because it will give you a really good idea of some of the things that are happening in the schools and some of the goals that we have set to make sure that our Black students are achieving to their highest potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Lazarus and retired elementary principal Jackie Steer. It's my pleasure to introduce Andrea Walters, DDSB elementary principal and chair of the Durham Black Educators Network.
Thank you. The mandate of the Durham Black Educators Network is to engage, empower, and support Black students, educators, parents, and the community. DBEN promotes cultural excellence, well-being, and inclusivity while challenging negative stereotypes about Black youth and culture. We focus on developing culturally responsive teaching, leadership programs, and resources to enhance success in education from kindergarten all the way to grade 12. DBEN organizes several events and activities to empower and support Black students, educators, and the community. For example, the Instill We Rise conference is an annual event focused on empowering students, parents, and educators. It features workshops, discussions, and keynote speakers addressing themes like self-care, self-advocacy, cultural identity, and leadership. The theme last year was Be It and See It. Other conferences include, as mentioned, a female conference called Empower Her, and a conference for Black males called Cypher. With the Black Student Association Conference in October, which both Ali and Brianne spoke about, we encourage Black student associations at all DDSB schools. We use the student ambassadors from the BSA to help with the organizing and leading of various events, which aims to foster well-being, celebrate Black excellence, and inspire meaningful change in schools and communities. Speaking of Black excellence, DBEN is always excited about our Activating Student Success Awards, which recognizes leaderships and role models in grades 7 to 12. Additional awards support post-secondary pursuits in education, STEM, and in other fields. Thousands of dollars are awarded on this night, and it's a great opportunity to recognize and celebrate Black excellence. We also aim to empower parents and guardians to help their children be successful. For example, DBEN recently hosted a general meeting where 2 trustees, 2 principals, and a superintendent answered questions about promoting student success at all levels. As an organization, we strongly believe that wellness also needs to be a focus. As a result, our wellness series includes networking for our Black employees and parents so that regardless of where they are located in Durham, they realize they are not alone. Networking opportunities are available through workshops, paint nights, journaling workshops, trivia nights, games nights, etc. Book clubs for educators and community members are also available. Professional development workshops will be organized by DBEN. We hope that you will become a part of our organization by clicking on the QR code that's available. And lastly, we have a vendor market this Saturday for the community at J. Clark Richardson with over 65 community vendors, which would love to meet you. Please join us on Instagram or Facebook to keep updated about the Durham Black Educators Network. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. As we move on to the Q&A segment, we welcome one of our facilitators, Crystal Bryan, DDSB retired principal, supporting the DDSB Anti-Oppression Department.
Good evening, everyone. I believe we're going to get to a question that you'll be able to see on the screen. Okay, I believe this question was sort of touched on earlier, but I'll just expand a bit. What is the school board's plan for incorporating Black Canadian history into the curriculum across all grade levels? And how will you ensure that the history is presented in a meaningful, accurate, and inclusive way that celebrates the contributions of Black Canadians while addressing the realities of systemic racism? Historical contributions of Black Canadians are incorporated into the elementary social science curriculum, beginning as early as grade 1. Some of the examples of where this is in our curriculum strands would be the heritage and identity section. There is a strand on people and environments, and one for local community. We support teachers in the classroom in weaving the contributions and achievements of Black Canadians throughout the curriculum. This is done with types of resources that we are constantly developing and purchasing, and then, of course, through content delivery strategies to ensure that students are hearing from a variety of voices and not just one narrative. We also make room for students to include their lived experiences within the classroom instruction, thus allowing the spaces to be truly inclusive. As was stated earlier by Superintendent Lazarus, the new grade 7, 8, and 10 Black History curriculum will be coming forth in September 2025. And we're in the process now of developing the professional development sessions for staff within those grades. You can go to the next question. I invite my counterpart, Sean.
Thanks, Crystal. So the next question one of the many questions that was posed to us is here. And how are you informing parents/families of Black students of available resources? So I want to say that right now we're in a time and place in education where we're extremely resource rich. There's a variety of texts and information available to us through the connectivity of the internet. So we're always offering solutions for educators to provide an exploratory adventure on what resources they can bring into classes that will support the learning. And of course, we have our resource selection policy as well, to ensure that when we do select a resource that we're going to bring in for learning, that it is something that aligns with our policies and procedures. The question was about in terms of informing families. And we are really trying to make a concerted effort to work alongside our DDSB communications team to get information out to the community. So whether that's through social media, earlier, Jackie mentioned that you may want to peruse a copy of the compendium if you haven't already done so. Well, you can find a copy on ddsb.ca on the anti-oppression page. So in the search bar, just type in anti-oppression and it will take you to our page. And then there are resources available there as well, such as the anti-oppression strategy and the compendium of action for Black student success. Of course, the best way and place to get resources still remains your child's school. So we're often sharing information with school leaders and asking them to send that out to the community so you have access to that as well. We'll continue to leverage DDSB's social media accounts. And of course, direct email communication as well when there are events such as this occurring or other resources that we are anxious to get into the hands of the family and community. And we can go to the next question, please.
Okay, what obligations do schools now have to collect data on anti-Black incidents? What is the data showing for Durham? What safe spaces exist for Black students to build resilience in the face of anti-Black issues? At present, the board does not have a fully measured mechanism to collect this data. The Durham District School Board has a very robust human rights, anti-discrimination, and anti-racism policy. And one of the sections within the policy is the complaint reporting section. As it stands now, there are two ways in which a complaint can be brought forward. And although I'm going to say informal and formal, please note that the board takes all of these complaints seriously. The informal process involves dealing directly with the school, with the complaint or issue of concern being brought to a teacher, the principal, or another DDSB employee. There are specific procedures that all staff members must follow when receiving such information, as per their duty bearer responsibilities. The situation will be brought to the board level for consultation, and a plan of action will be put in place to resolve the matter. The formal process involves a complaint of issue or concern to the school superintendent of equitable education by phone or by email. All superintendents' names can be found on your school's website. The complaint, this complaint for now would be handwritten, or details could be given over the phone. The Human Rights Department is developing a form that can be used for such reporting in the future. We're currently working on a reporting and complaint management system that will help us count and track the number of student and family issues, incidents, and complaints that are reported. Although we collect yearly stats on the total number of issues, incidents, and complaints that are reported to the Human Rights and Equity Advisor, we are not able to pull apart the number that relate to anti-Black racism and intersectionality. The intersectionality specifically. This is work in progress, and it's going to be part of what we call the complaint management system. Anecdotally, I had the opportunity to speak with the Human Rights Equity Advisor and Equity Advisor today, and one of the things we talked about was that there has been a total number of increase of issues of complaints, and we're talking about across all code grounds in the last 3 to 4 years. And of course, that coincides with the development of our human rights policy. I was also told that the allegations of racism, and in particular anti-Black racism specifically, remains one of the top cited concerns. We know that developing the tracking system and collecting this data is critical. It's important to both help identify system issues and trends, make improvements, and report on progress over time. With regard to the second part of the question, DDSB schools do commit to creating the everyday condition that allow all students and staff to thrive. This happens when the educators in the building take important steps to get to know their students and to be present for them every day. This is how connection is built. And this connection is what makes it possible to create and sustain a safe space for students. In particular, the BSAs that were spoken about earlier have helped our Black children and youth thrive as they have a space where they can develop their many talents in a community of brotherhood and sisterhood. Many of the students have said, including the 2 leadership students that we have on our call today, that their BSA helped them to take more leadership roles within their school, and more importantly, they believe they're being seen and heard in their classes simply because their voices have been amplified. And mostly, as was mentioned by the CCPI conversation, because teachers are working towards a more inclusive and culturally relevant curriculum. Next question.
Thanks, Crystal. Again, this is a 2-part question, so I will address the first part and then the second. What resources are available to Black children with special needs or who are on the spectrum or who are autistic? There are a variety of special education supporting teams, planning teams, and services available to students who are neurodivergent or autistic learners. And those are all available through our Inclusive Student Services department here in the DSB. I think right now, what we are trying to work with right now is helping our special education resource teachers be bias aware with special education practices to ensure that when we are going through the process of providing students with special education services, particularly those students who are Black, that we are walking into that situation through the understanding of what is best for the child and ensuring that students get the services they need to be successful, number one. So we're well aware of the disproportionate outcomes, the disproportionate representation of Black students in special education. So I just want to reiterate that special education is a wonderful service that we provide to learners who need the additional and individualized plans. And when it is working in its optimal way, we see massive growth and gains for our students. So as we're looking to support our Black students as well, we want to ensure that there is no misdiagnosis, that we are bias aware, so that students can have access to the wonderful services that we already have here in the DDSB. On the second part of that question is, how does the compendium align with the action taking to support students with advanced needs and, for example, learning disabilities or autism? I want to just bring your attention to sections 4.5 to 4.7 in the compendium. And if you dive deep into those sections, and I'm not going to list verbatim what those sections outline, however, that will give you some information on some of the actions that we are taking right now to support special education through the compendium. We are activating one response right now. We are working with every special education resource teacher in all of our elementary schools and special education department heads in our secondary schools to provide dismantling anti-Black racism in special education PD that is being facilitated by Dr. Wes Burns. It is a 3-part session. We have our last part happening on December 4th, and we're really excited to continue that learning as it connects to the CCPI work that is happening in schools. And on that note, those are the questions that we're just going to answer within the session today. There was a variety of other questions that were submitted, and we are committed to providing responses. So we're currently speaking with other system leaders and educators within the district to provide you with the responses to those questions. And we're committing to get those responses back to you via email in a very timely manner. Because I'm sure some of the questions and answers that were submitted, although you may not have submitted one, may align with something that you're thinking, wondering about, or experiencing. So at this time, I'm going to pass it back to Superintendent Lazarus to bring closing remarks on behalf of the committee this evening.
Thank you so much, Sean and Crystal, for responding to some of the questions that were posed by our attendees tonight. So we just want to thank all of our speakers tonight for their presentations and for doing an excellent job of communicating the work that we are doing in our board. We also want to thank our hosts, Avril and Ali, for the wonderful job that they have done. They're members of our Anti-Black Racism Task Force Committee and are very committed members and of that committee. We also want to thank our keynote speaker, Dr. Nicole West Burns, who has been working tirelessly with our staff over the past several years, giving us the tools and strategies to identify, address, and dismantle anti-Black racism in our district. We want to express, however, our deepest gratitude for your dedication for attending this engagement session tonight. Your presence here tonight is a testament to our shared commitment to the success and well-being of our Black students and underscores the collective effort required to drive meaningful change within the DDSB. So over the past years, to summarize, we've made progress in implementing the action items from the Compendium of Action for Black Student Success. We've expanded our mentorship programs and introduced new initiatives, and we have established graduation coaches in several of our schools that provide personalized guidance and support for our Black students. Our curriculum now better reflects the rich histories and contributions of the Black community. We have integrated culturally responsive teaching practices to ensure that all students feel represented and valued in their learning experiences. We have increased professional development opportunities for our educators, focusing on anti-racism and equity training, and which is empowering our teachers to create more inclusive and supportive classroom environments. We have strengthened our partnerships with community organizations and to ensure that the voices of our Black families are heard and incorporated into our decision-making processes. And we will continue to use data to identify and address achievement gaps. Our goal is to ensure that every Black student has the resources and support they need to succeed academically and personally. These updates reflect our ongoing commitment to creating an equitable and inclusive educational experience, an environment for all of our students, and are just a glimpse of the ongoing work that our staff and students are doing in the DDSB to support our Black students. So we want to thank you for coming tonight, and we wish you an enjoyable rest of this evening. So thank you and look forward to our meeting. Our next session, our update session, will be held next year, Wednesday, May the 21st and Tuesday, May the 27th. So mark those dates in your calendar. Locations are still yet to be determined, but please, and that will be an in-person event. So please mark those dates and be ready to come out and to hear more of the work that we are doing to ensure the success of our Black students. So thank you again for coming and enjoy the rest of the evening.